Louie T. Welcome to the Command Post. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. You know what this is. Post up and take command. We are now in the unofficial stages of free agency as it's gotten underway with the tampering period. None of these deals that we've heard announced are official and won't become official until the start of the new league year. And generally, when we hear these deals in principle, they are actually going to become a reality on Wednesday. We have seen it in the past where a guy has changed his mind. Anthony Barr did it a few years ago with the Minnesota Vikings, had a deal in principle in place with the Jets, and then decided to go back to Minnesota. That's rare, however, and when we hear these deals reported in principle, they usually turn out to be what ultimately happens. So we're seeing a lot of guys change teams, not officially yet, but you see what's going on. And let's start out with our own guys. You know, wake up in the morning, brush your teeth, and grab your strap. God blessing all the trap safeties. God blessing all the trap safeties. This Troy Apke, a.k.a. Trap, is back for the re-up in Washington. I know a lot of y'all don't give a damn, but hey, they made him a priority. Why? Because he's one of the best special teams players in the league. And so you guys got to respect Trap. He's back. We read up on Trap, and good to have him back. I like Trap. I know a lot of you don't care. I do, because special teams is important, and you guys only think about special teams when it is a problem. The reason it's not a problem is because of guys like Troy Apke. So he's back in the mix, and Scott Turner got a deal over the weekend, a 3-year extension to stay here in Washington. So I know a lot of people, I was in the comment section lurking, as I often am, and a lot of people were not happy about Scott Turner getting an extension. And I get it. You know, there's some mixed emotions with Scott Turner. I have my moments with him when I get frustrated. The one thing I've always harped about with Scott Turner, I told you I actually like Scott Turner. I think he does a really good job. I think the biggest issue with Scott Turner is situational awareness. I've always said that, and I continue to feel that way. I don't think his situational awareness is the greatest, but that said, I think he's a really good play caller. I think he understands schemes and how to get guys open, and I think he understands what we have on this team and how to utilize those guys. I'd like to see him be a little bit more, and I'm anxious to see him get his hands on Curtis Samuel. I really am, because I think that might change the way he calls games and the way we go about things moving forward. But I think with better quarterback play, with some of the guys that we can put on the football field, and if we get some guys to step their games up, especially at the receiver position, this team could really have a potent offense. And I think Scott Turner is the right man for the job. Unlike some of you out there, I have no problems with them re-upping with Scott Turner. What that says to me is that they truly believe in his ability to get Carson Wentz to play good football. And this is bigger than Carson Wentz, because Wentz could be one and done here. They signed him to a 3-year extension. So this isn't all to do with Carson Wentz, but what they're saying is, we believe in your ability to take Carson Wentz and get the most out of him here in Washington. And if that doesn't happen, we believe in your ability to get the next guy up to speed and have him play at a high level. So we'll see what happens. But nonetheless, Scott Turner re-upped and is back in Washington with an extendo clip 3-year deal to stay here with the Commanders. Also, as we see free agency in this tampering period kind of get underway, Brandon Scherff, we talked about this ad nauseum. I told you he was not going to be back. Martin Mayhew essentially told us he wasn't going to be back when he said, hey, we offered him a deal to become the highest paid offensive lineman in NFL history, and he turned it down. From that point forward, they turned their back on Brandon Scherff. And I told you guys, we're going to really truly find out if Scherff wanted to be here, and he didn't. Look, they gave him all the power, and he utilized it. I'm not mad at Brandon Scherff, but don't sit here and tell us that you want to spend the rest of your career here in Washington, because that wasn't true. If you did, when they offered you that deal, even though you had all the leverage and you had all the power, you didn't have to take that second franchise tag. You could have signed that long-term deal, okay? Justin Simmons could have taken that second franchise tag in Denver and said, hey, I'm just going to use this second franchise tag, play on it one more year, and then hit free agency, because you're not going to tag me a third time. And then he could have gotten the most money he could have gotten out on the free agent market. And it would have been probably more than the deal he signed with the Denver Broncos. But you know what? He actually wanted to stay in Denver, so he took that deal that they offered him when he was on that second franchise tag. And that's what guys do when they actually want to be there. Leonard Williams actually wanted to be with the Giants. So when they franchise tagged him a second year in a row, he actually signed the deal. I could go on and on with guys that got the deal done on that second franchise tag, even though the money that they could have gained in that second franchise tag year and then hit the market the following year would have been greater. That's not what it's about. It's about wanting to be in a place and that team showing you that they want you and you signing on the dotted line. And Scherff had an opportunity to do that, and he just didn't. So, you know, the whole I want to be here, I want to spend the rest of my career here, that shit was bogus on the part of Brandon Scherff. But again, I'm not mad at the man. Get your bread while it's there to be got. That bread was hot in the oven, and Brandon was like, I'm not going to touch it until that thing is fully cooked and ready to come out. And now he's going to become a Jacksonville Jaguar. Still haven't seen the parameters of the deal and how much he's going to get. But I didn't want to spend that kind of money on guard, to be honest with you, whether it was Brandon Scherff or it was Zach Martin or whomever, all pro this guy, all pro that guy. You know, I didn't want to spend that kind of money on a guard. And, you know, if we would have spent it on Brandon Scherff last year or the year before that, I would have been on board. He's homegrown product. But again, I want a guy to want us just as much as we want him. And clearly that was not the case. The feeling was not mutual. So he's going to get his money, it looks like, from the Jacksonville Jaguars. Speaking of guys getting their money, did you see the deal that Christian Kirk got from the Jacksonville Jaguars? And I'm going to give you a little bit of information here in a second, but just understand, I've talked about Terry and how he's going to play the waiting game because that's what guys in his position do. There's no reason to rush to the table to sign your name on a deal. It doesn't make sense because there are going to be other guys that get paid that kind of set the groundwork for what you're going to be looking for when it's your turn to sign. And Christian Kirk is a great example of that. That same draft that Terry was in, Christian Kirk was in. Christian Kirk, if I'm not mistaken, was a second-round pick out of Texas A&M. And he now is a Jacksonville Jaguar. He just got a 4-year, $72 million deal. So in essence, that same deal that we saw Jonathan Allen sign with Washington last year, Christian Kirk got as a wide receiver that's never had a 1,000-yard season in his career. Okay, he's getting 18 per to never have had a 1,000-yard season. Now they're paying Christian Kirk not for what he did in Arizona, where he was never the number one guy, and he's not going to be the number one guy in Jacksonville. However, they're paying him for what they think he can be in the future, and he's really talented as Christian Kirk, and they're looking to surround Trevor Lawrence with as much talent as possible. I love what they're doing in the aggressive nature that they're showing in Jacksonville. But what I'm more concerned with is what this means for our guy, Terry McLaurin. And what that essentially says is that's $18 million for Kenny Golladay, who didn't have a single receiving touchdown last year. That's $18 million per year for Christian Kirk, who doesn't have a 1,000-yard receiving season to his name. What do you think is going to happen when A.J. Brown steps up to the table, or a guy like Deebo Samuel steps up to the table, or DK Metcalf steps up to the table? That number is only going to increase. So what I'm telling you is Terry's going to wait. Terry's going to see what one of these guys gets, maybe two of these guys get. That number is probably going to exceed 20 million now, and we're going to see Terry probably be upwards of 4 years, 5 years. That same deal they offered Amari Cooper, I think it was 5 years, $110 million. I think you're going to see something similar for Terry McLaurin when he signs that extension. Something along the lines of 5 years, 5 years, $110 million, which is $22 million per year. It'll be somewhere in that neighborhood. I truly believe that. Okay, so just be patient. It's going to take place, but it's going to be a while, as I told you guys in a previous video. Now, I also want to bring this up really quick. Our free agent approach is one that you should not be discouraged by. We're not going to be in this first wave of free agency. This is for the ballers. This is for the people where they say, where them dollars at? Where them dollars at? That's when those ballers come out and they start making it rain. That's what the Patriots did last year. That's what the Jaguars are doing right now. When you are that team that can make it rain, that's what you do in the infant stages of free agency. When all the high-priced items get pushed out on the racks to the front of the store, that's where the ballers shop. We're going to wait until all those items have been picked through and they're gone, and then we're going to make our way to the back of the establishment where all the pink tag items and clearance items are, and that's when we're going to start picking off the rack. Oh, this looks nice. And you're going to say, I wonder do they have this in a large? Ah, got it. And you're going to put it in the cart. So don't be discouraged by our inactivity during free agency. When you see all these big names, we were never going to be in that market. After the Carson Wentz deal, we pretty much put ourselves in a position where we weren't going to be overly aggressive. I don't know if we were going to be aggressive anyway had we not done the Carson Wentz deal, okay? But the fact of the matter is, since we did do the Carson Wentz deal, and that did take a huge chunk of our cap space, we're not going to be as aggressive in free agency. And I really think they are more concerned with bringing back their own guys. They've already done it with Troy Apke. They already done it, with several other guys that, Charles Leno Jr., for an example. I think they're more interested in bringing back Bobby McCain and J.D. McKissick and some of these guys that have expiring deals. But as Martin Mayhew told us, we're going to let those guys test free agency. We're going to let those guys go out there. They know where we stand. They know that we want them back. And if they want to act in good faith, they go out on the market. They go get themselves essentially a preliminary offer from a team, almost to an extent, an offer sheet, if you will, okay, as if we had the right of first refusal, but we don't. These guys are unrestricted free agents. They're not restricted in any way, shape, or form. But you go out there, and if you really want to be back in Washington, you'll go out, and in the case of a J.D. McKissick, he goes out, and the Jacksonville Jaguars, I'm just throwing this is just random. This is not an actual thing. This is just a fictitious scenario that I've made up that I'm for the purpose of this discussion. He goes to Jacksonville, and the Jaguars say, hey, we'll give you a 3-year, $16 million deal. Okay, so you're essentially saying $5.3 million per is what that essentially amounts to. And J.D. McKissick says, hey, that's good money right there for me. And he takes that deal and he walks it back to Washington and says, hey, this is what Jacksonville said they would do. Can you guys match this or beat it? If not, I'm going to take the deal with Jacksonville. That's essentially what they're hoping these guys do, is act in good faith, where they go out, get a deal, an offer, and then they bring it back to Washington and say, hey, this is what's on the table right now. Does this sound like something that you're willing to do? If not, I'm just going to go ahead and sign that deal. So just because we're not active right now doesn't mean we're not looking and we're not looking to shop. We are going to end up probably shopping and picking up a few items, but we don't have, like last year, we had the bread. So last year, when everybody was making it rain and they were asking where them dollars at, we were out there at the front going out and getting Curtis Samuel, going out and getting William Jackson III. We were out there going and getting Ryan Fitzpatrick. We were among some of the most aggressive early on in free agency. We're back to where we were 2 years ago when Ron first got here, when we were bargain bin shopping, when we were going out and signing Logan Thomas, when we were signing J.D. McKissick, when we were going out and signing guys like the guard from Atlanta, Wes Schweitzer, when we went out and got or brought back John Bostic. Those smaller, under the radar moves that no one's really talking about, that if you're not a fan of the team, it wouldn't even cause a blip on the radar screen. Those are the kind of deals we'll be making this year, so it'll be interesting to see what happens and how long it takes us to get into the fray. And if we're able to get some of these guys back, because I know they want J.D. McKissick back. I know they want Bobby McCain back. I know they've played around with the idea of getting Cam Sims back in the fold. We'll see if those things take place or not, but Brandon Scherff is gone. Good riddance. His time here was great. We enjoyed him, but his time had come to an end. Looks like he's going to be a Jacksonville Jaguar. We'll see. But Zach Ertz was another guy that you guys were interested in. He got a big deal to stay in Arizona. I never thought he was coming here. I didn't think that was our move. And again, Zach Ertz, still playing at a high level, was going to command some good money. You saw what he got from Arizona. You're talking about damn near $10 million per year. I think it was a 3-year, $34 million deal. So you're talking about over $11 million per year, something along those lines. Our starting tight end is making $8 million per year. They're not going to go out and sign a guy that's making more than Logan Thomas. So Zach Ertz was never coming here. So that's why I'm trying to get you guys to understand. You have to start playing the game in your mind. You got to know how the rules to the game work. So if you know how the rules to the game go, then play, okay? They're not going to go out and sign a guy that makes more money than our starting guy, because now you're causing problems in the locker room when you do that, which is why they're not going out and signing a big-name wide receiver. And I wouldn't vouch for that anyway. You're about to spend a ton of money on Terry. You just spent money on Curtis Samuel. you got to go via the draft. You see how much Christian Kirk just got. The man, like I said, really good receiver, and the upside on him is through the roof, and that's what Jacksonville is paying for. But the man's never had a 1,000-yard season, and he's making $18 million per year. You don't want any parts of that. You don't want that smoke, okay? Let somebody else deal with that. You go in the draft, just like Dallas has done. Dallas has done a really good job of this over the years, of drafting receivers that turn out to give them great value. Now, they can't sign them. They just lost Cedric Wilson to the Dolphins. They just lost Amari Cooper. They had to trade him away. They did keep Michael Gallup, but this is what they've done. They turn receivers over. They draft really well at that position. I guarantee you that the Cowboys are probably going to draft another 1 or 2 more receivers that are really good, and they're going to help them. And then by the time they get to their free agency point, they'll either move on for those guys, or they'll get rid of Michael Gallup so they can re-sign one of those other guys. But that's what we need to do. We need to start hitting on some of these receivers. We don't hit on receivers often enough. We hit on Terry. That's great. And I'm glad we hit on Terry, because if we didn't hit on Terry, we would have nothing to show for the receiver position and all the draft capital that we spent at that position over the last decade or so. We got nothing to show for what we've done. From Leonard Hankerson to Josh Doxson to what was the little white slot receiver that we got, Mr. Irrelevant, the last pick in the draft that Jay Gruden absolutely loved. Can't even think of his damn name. We got so many of those forgettable receivers that we've drafted here, whether it's been in the first round like Doxson, or in the second round like Malcolm Kelly, and what the hell was my man's name? Devin, We've had so many of these guys that were ass-tastic, all right? At some point, we've got to start hitting on these receivers. And, AGG was a big bust. It was a waste of a pick. We can't keep doing that. We got to start hitting on some of these receivers. So Dyami Brown needs to work. He needs to work out. We got to see something from him this year. And again, when we drafted him last year, rather, I said I wasn't looking for Dyami Brown to come in here and have to be a key contributor. But every year we draft one of these receivers, we have 2 injuries or 3 injuries at the receiver position that force a young guy into the spotlight faster than they should have been. When AGG was drafted, he had no business starting across from Terry McLaurin. But because we had nothing else, and we had Dontrell Inman and the lights at receiver, and Isaiah Wright and all these bums that we were parading as real, true NFL wide receivers, we had to throw AGG in there. He was not ready. His head was spinning, okay? The same thing with Dyami Brown. I said, look, Dyami Brown should be an afterthought for this offense as a rookie. We got Terry. We got Curtis Samuel. We went out and got Adam Humphries. He should be, at best, the 4th option, maybe even the 5th after Cam Sims. And what happens? You get Curtis Samuel goes down, and all of a sudden now we're reaching and we're grasping at straws for somebody else to step up and be that guy opposite of Terry, because Curtis Samuel was no longer there. And all of a sudden Dyami's thrusted into that role, much like AGG. He gets injured, and it's a wash of a first season for him. I'm looking for him to step up and not necessarily be dynamic or this, that, and the third. I just need him to be productive, look like he belongs here in the NFL in year number 2. And I think he will. I think he truly will. But we got to start hitting on receivers in the draft. And I think we're going to draft another one this year. I'd be shocked if we didn't. But just know that our free agency approach is going to be one of caution, one of patience. And so don't get upset when you see teams being uber aggressive out there in the free agent market. The biggest move that we will make in free agency, we've already made with the trading trading for Carson Wentz. That's the biggest move that we'll make. And you already see the dominoes kind of falling because of that one move. Landon Collins got cut because of that one move. All right? Excuse me. There may be some more restructures due to that move. There may be a lack of aggression in free agency because of that move. So you're already seeing the dominoes start to fall because of that move. Just because we made that move doesn't mean we can't still be somewhat aggressive. You just have to be selectively aggressive, which is what I thought they would have done anyway, but I think they might have been a little bit more aggressive in certain areas. I still want them to go after tight end in free agency. Let the dust settle, let the smoke clear. Mo Alley Cox has gone back to Indianapolis. Zach Ertz has gone back to Arizona, so some tight ends. And then we know Mike Gesicki went back to Miami on a franchise tag. We know that Dallas brought back Dalton Schultz on a franchise tag. So we see what the market at the tight end position is starting to do. It's starting to shrink. So there's not a lot of stuff out there. So you don't want to wait too long. If you're interested in an O.J. Howard, pull the trigger. Pull the trigger. So we'll see what happens. But just know we're not going to be super aggressive. And even the guys that we want back, I think they're going to take a wait and see approach, see what they get out there on the market. And if they don't love what they hear, they'll come back to Washington. The offer that may have been already made may still be on the table. If the offer that they get out there is one that Washington isn't willing to meet, then that guy will go sign elsewhere. Tim Settle is a free agent. Obviously, J.D. McKissick, Bobby McCain, these are all guys that are free agents. And so there are a lot of guys that you see already at the guard position that are getting good money. I don't think we're in a position to pay anybody really good money at the guard position. Laken Tomlinson has already gotten paid. We've seen a bevy of guys already go and change teams and get paid. Roger Saffold already changing teams. A lot of guards are going. So I think our best bet is probably going to be in the draft, to be honest with you, at guard, which is a spot where we'll need to either fill in with a starter or have a credible backup there, because again, Wes Schweitzer can slide in. He's already shown us the ability to do that. But do you want Wes Schweitzer starting? I would prefer him coming off the bench, because I know what I'm getting out of Wes Schweitzer in the event that somebody goes down. I've got a guy that can play all three interior offensive line positions, and that is very comforting for me. So I would prefer us to go out and get a guy to start, or say, hey, this is your chance, Sadiq Charles. We're giving you an opportunity to start. We still need to do something regardless of whether the guy on the team is going to fill that void at right guard or not. We still need to go out and add more depth to the offensive line, both at tackle, especially if we lose Cornelius Lucas, who is another free agent for this team, or you're talking guard with the departure of Brandon Scherff. So there's work that needs to be done all over this roster. I've already talked about the holes on this roster and what I would do to address them: receiver, safety, linebacker, tight end, offensive line, depth. You know, there's running back for me is another position. I could go on and on and on. Cornerback, we need a nickel in the worst way. So for me, the draft is where we'll have to do some of the damage, but don't make it where you have to do all of your damage, which is why I think they need to be somewhat aggressive. And like I said, cautiously aggressive. All right. Selectively aggressive. But a guy like O.J. Howard, for me, makes a ton of sense for this team at the tight end position. Someone like that's not going to cost you a ton of money to go out and get. So we'll see. With the market at the tight end position shrinking, a guy like O.J. Howard probably has the spotlight shined on him even greater. And now his opportunities start to expand. Whereas if they're the Mike Gesicki's of the world and Dalton Schultz and all these guys had been allowed to hit the free agent market, maybe that would have changed the perception of O.J. Howard and he would have been sitting there waiting. But you never know. We'll see how these things go. But don't be alarmed that Washington is kind of sitting on their hands. This is the approach that they were probably going to take before the Wentz deal. It's definitely the approach they're taking after it with their money situation. So that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T. Tell me what you think down below about Scherff's departure, about the approach that Washington may be taking. Troy Apke's back. Landon Collins is gone. All of the things that have happened. Scott Turner getting a new 3-year extension. How do you feel about all of these things? And there will be more to talk about. There will be more to digest with this team. And I'll keep you abreast of all of it here on the Louie T Network. And once again, I want to thank all of you for your support. We just hit the 20,000 subscriber milestone, which was a big one for me. When I first started, that was one of the numbers that I set out. It was 1, it was 5, it was 10, and it was 20. And 20, it seemed just so far away, when I first started, and now here we are. It took us a while to get here, but I appreciate every step of the journey. And again, a lot of you out there are the reason why I was able to hit that milestone. So thank you once again. I am a Washington fan, etched in burgundy and gold. My Washington spirit will never die. Washington spirit will never fold. Until we meet again, you guys know what it is. Post up and take command. I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. Until next time, we will continue to keep our eye on this team, ears to the street to see what is going on, because we are not done, and there will be a lot of things that will transpire, whether it's to us, someone in the division. We will be on top of all of it here on the Louie T Network. Until then, you guys take care. See you next time.
Louie T Network.